The phone rang at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, cutting through the silence of our empty house like a blade. I'd been sitting in my workshop, nursing a beer and pretending to fix an old carburetor, when the shrill sound made me jump. After 15 years of marriage, you develop instincts about late-night calls. Nothing good ever comes after 11. "Is this Eliot Griffin?" The voice was professional, clinical. "This is Maine Medical Center. Your wife Vanessa has been in an automobile accident." My hands went numb. The wrench I'd been holding clattered to the concrete floor. "Is she? How bad is it?" "She's stable, Mr. Griffin. Conscious and alert. Some bruising, possible concussion. You should come in." I drove through the empty streets of Millbrook like a man possessed, my old Ford pickup growling through the gears. Our little coastal Maine town looked different at midnight. Smaller, lonelier. The hospital sat on the hill overlooking the harbor, its windows glowing like eyes in the darkness. Vanessa lay in the emergency room bed looking pale but alert, her auburn hair spread across the pillow like spilled wine. A butterfly bandage decorated her left temple, and her designer blouse was torn at the shoulder. "Eli," she whispered when she saw me. "Thank God you're here." I took her hand, squeezed it gently. "What happened, honey?" "I was driving home from the office. Late meeting with the shipping contracts. A deer ran out. I swerved and hit a tree." Her voice was shaky, uncertain. "The car's totaled. The doctor, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, pulled me aside. Mrs. Griffin was lucky. The airbag deployed properly. We're keeping her overnight for observation, but she should be fine to go home tomorrow." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. Whatever problems Vanessa and I had, and we had plenty, I didn't want her hurt. Her friend Liz arrived 20 minutes later, all nervous energy and fluttering hands. Elizabeth Hartwell had been Vanessa's best friend since college, a thin woman with sharp features and an expensive haircut that never looked quite right on her. "Oh my God, Vanessa, I came as soon as I heard," Liz gushed, barely acknowledging me. "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" "I'm fine," Vanessa said, but her eyes darted between us. "Eli, could you go home and get my laptop? I need to check some emails for tomorrow." "Honey, you just had an accident. Work can wait." "Please, Eli, the Morrison account—" "I'll handle it," I said, kissing her forehead. "You rest." Liz walked me to the parking lot, her heels clicking on the asphalt. "She's been working so hard lately," she said, not meeting my eyes. "All those late nights at the office?" "Yeah," I replied. "All those late nights." Our house sat on 2 acres outside town, a rambling colonial that had belonged to my grandfather. I'd spent 5 years renovating it after we got married, turning the attached barn into my workshop and the old shed into a proper garage. Vanessa always said it was too big, too isolated. She preferred the energy of town, the social scene at the country club. I found her laptop on the kitchen counter, plugged into its charger. The screen was still open to her email account. Vanessa was usually paranoid about computer security. Passwords, locked screens, the works. The accident must have rattled her more than she let on. I was about to close it when a name caught my eye in her inbox. Derek Mallory. Derek Mallory. Real estate developer, town selectman, pillar of the community. Married to Patricia Mallory, who ran the local historical society. I knew Derek from high school. He'd been 2 years ahead of me, quarterback on the football team. Everything handed to him on a silver platter. The email preview showed, "Can't wait to see you tonight. The usual place." My finger hovered over the touchpad. I shouldn't look. This was Vanessa's private correspondence. But something cold and sick was growing in my stomach, a feeling I'd been pushing down for months. I clicked. The email was from 3 days ago. Short, direct. "Can't wait to see you tonight. The usual place. Wear the red dress I bought you. D." My hands started shaking. I scrolled down to Vanessa's reply. "You know I will. Eli's working late again. We have until midnight. V. The red dress. I remembered that dress. Vanessa had worn it to dinner last week, said she was meeting clients at the Ocean View restaurant. She'd looked beautiful, radiant even. I'd been proud that she was my wife. I opened another email, then another. The messages went back months, then years. Hotel reservations, restaurant bookings, intimate details that made my stomach turn. References to weekend trips I thought she'd taken with Liz. Business conferences that didn't exist. Jesus Christ, I whispered to the empty kitchen. I found a folder labeled Derek Personal. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Vanessa and Derek at restaurants I couldn't afford. Vanessa and Derek in hotel rooms. Vanessa wearing jewelry I'd never seen, jewelry I sure as hell hadn't bought her. The timestamps told the story. The oldest photos were dated 8 years ago. 8 years. More than half our marriage had been a lie. I kept digging, my anger growing with each discovery. Bank statements showing transfers to an account I didn't know about. Credit card bills for purchases I'd never seen. A document folder labeled Business Opportunities that made my blood run cold. Inside was a detailed plan to force me out of Griffin Construction, the company I'd built from nothing after my father's heart attack. Derek's development firm would acquire my contracts, my equipment, my reputation. Vanessa would get power of attorney, claiming I was unstable and unable to manage business affairs. They were going to destroy me. I sat in that kitchen until dawn, reading every email, every document, every piece of evidence of their betrayal. By the time the sun came up over Millbrook Harbor, I wasn't the same man who'd answered the phone 12 hours earlier. I was something harder, something colder, something with a plan. I arrived at the hospital at 9 a.m. with coffee, flowers, and Vanessa's laptop bag. To anyone watching, I was the perfect devoted husband. Worried, attentive, loving. Inside, I felt like a stranger watching someone else's life. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" I asked, arranging the flowers in a vase. "Better. Ready to go home." Vanessa looked pale but alert. "Did you bring my laptop?" "Right here." I set the bag beside her bed. "I didn't look at anything, I promise." The lie came easily. Too easily. Dr. Martinez arrived with discharge papers and instructions. No driving for 48 hours. Rest. Watch for signs of delayed concussion. I nodded and took notes like the concerned husband I was supposed to be. Liz appeared as we were getting ready to leave, carrying a bouquet that made mine look pathetic. "Vanessa, honey, you look awful. Are you sure you should go home?" "I'm fine, Liz, really." But Vanessa's eyes were nervous, darting between us. "Maybe you should stay with us for a few days," Liz continued, "until you're feeling better." "She's coming home with me," I said firmly. "Where she belongs." The drive home was quiet. Vanessa dozed in the passenger seat, while I planned her destruction with the same methodical precision I used to frame houses. Every nail in its place, every board measured twice, cut once. At home, I helped her to the couch and brought her tea. "I called your office," I said. "Told them you'd be out for a few days." "Thank you." She squeezed my hand. "Eli, I know I haven't been the best wife lately. All the work stress, the late nights." "Don't worry about it," I said. "You just focus on getting better." She fell asleep on the couch around noon. I waited an hour, then got to work. First, I gathered every piece of financial documentation in the house. Bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds, insurance policies. Vanessa had always handled our finances. She was better with numbers, she said. More organized, more secretive. I found the account statements for her private checking account, the one Derek had been funding. $43,000, accumulated over 2 years. Money that should have been going into our joint savings, into the business, into our future. I photographed everything with my phone, uploaded the images to a secure cloud account, then put the originals back exactly where I'd found them. Evidence first, action second. Next, I visited our lawyer, Tom Brennan. Tom had handled my father's will, our mortgage paperwork, the business incorporation. He was old-school Maine, honest, thorough, and discreet. "Eli," he said, looking up from his desk, "how's Vanessa? Heard about the accident." "She's recovering. Tom, I need to ask you about something sensitive, hypothetically." I laid out the situation in broad strokes: discovered affair, evidence of financial deception, concerns about business sabotage. Tom listened without judgment, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "Hypothetically," he said when I finished, "a man in this situation would want to protect his assets, make sure his business interests are secure, document everything, of course." "Of course. The house is in both names, but you inherited it. With proper documentation, we could establish sole ownership. The business is already yours. Your father was smart about that. As for the joint accounts," he shrugged, "community property works both ways." I left Tom's office with a clear understanding of my options. All legal, all above board, all devastating. While Vanessa recovered at home, I became a detective in my own life. 8 years of lies don't unravel easily. They have to be pulled apart, thread by thread. I started with Derek Mallory. Derek's development company, Coastal Properties, had offices in a converted Victorian mansion on Main Street. I parked across the street and watched the building for 3 days, learning his patterns. Derek arrived at 9:30 each morning in his silver BMW, left for lunch at 12:15, and usually departed by 5:30, except on Thursdays. On Thursdays, he left at 4 and drove to the Ocean View restaurant, where he'd meet Vanessa for what I now knew were their regular dates. It was Tuesday when I followed him to the Harbor View Motel on Route 1, a shabby place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Derek parked behind the building and walked to room 12. 20 minutes later, a red Mazda pulled up, but it wasn't Vanessa who got out. It was Patricia Mallory, Derek's wife. I sat in my truck, stunned. Patricia was a small, elegant woman in her 40s, active in every charity and social organization in town. She looked around nervously before knocking on the door. Derek responded, and they embraced like lovers. He cheated on his wife with my wife, and he cheated on my wife with his wife. The situation was so complicated, it was almost funny. Almost. I drove home with a new piece of the puzzle. Derek wasn't just a cheater, he was a compulsive one. That gave me leverage. Vanessa was in the kitchen when I got back, making dinner for the first time in months. She looked domestic, innocent, like the woman I'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. "How was work?" she asked, not looking up from the stove. "Busy. The Morrison project is behind schedule." I watched her face carefully. "Might need to work late tomorrow night." "That's fine. Liz invited me to dinner anyway. Girls' night." Another lie, delivered with practiced ease. According to her laptop, Thursday was Derek night. Liz was just the cover story. "Sounds fun," I said. "You should go. Get out of the house." That night, I lay in bed beside my wife and planned her downfall. She slept peacefully, probably dreaming of Derek. I stared at the ceiling and thought about justice. The next morning, I made a call to my old friend, Mike Santos, who ran the town's only private investigation service. Mike was a former Boston cop who'd moved to Maine for the quiet life. He owed me a favor. I'd renovated his office for cost when he first opened. "Eli," he said when I walked into his office, "what can I do for you?" I laid out what I needed: surveillance, documentation, proof of adultery that would hold up in court. Mike listened without judgment. He'd handled plenty of cheating spouse cases. "This is going to hurt," he warned me. "Seeing it all laid out in black and white. You sure you want to go down this road?" "I'm already down it," I said. "I just need to know how far it goes." Mike's report arrived 3 days later. 47 pages of surveillance notes, photographs, and financial records. The affair had been going on for 8 years and 4 months. They'd been to 17 different hotels, 8 restaurants, and 2 weekend getaways that Vanessa had told me were work conferences. The financial analysis was worse. Derek had been paying for everything: dinners, hotels, jewelry, clothes, even a credit card in Vanessa's maiden name that I'd never known about. The total came to over $60,000. But the real bombshell was in the appendix. Mike had done background research on Derek's business dealings and found a pattern of corruption: bribed building inspectors, fraudulent environmental reports, tax evasion. Derek Mallory wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal. I had enough evidence to destroy both of them. The question was, how to use it. I decided to let them hang themselves. On Thursday evening, I told Vanessa I had to work late on the Morrison project. She kissed me goodbye and said she'd be at Liz's until 10. I watched her drive away in her replacement car, a red Mazda that looked suspiciously like the one Patricia Mallory drove. Instead of going to the job site, I drove to the Harborview Motel and waited. Vanessa arrived at 6:30, parking behind the building like Derek had taught her. She looked beautiful, in a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled in a way that must have cost $100. She walked to room 12 like she owned the place. I sat in my truck and watched the windows. The curtains were drawn, but I could see shadows moving inside, my wife and her lover acting out their betrayal 50 feet away from me. The rage I'd been suppressing for weeks finally broke free. I wanted to kick down that door, to drag Derek Mallory into the parking lot and beat him senseless. I wanted to scream at Vanessa, to make her explain how she could destroy our marriage for this pathetic charade. Instead, I took pictures. The motel sign, Vanessa's car, the room number, evidence for the file that would end their affair permanently. At 8:15, they emerged from the room. Derek looked smug, satisfied. Vanessa looked radiant in a way I hadn't seen in years. They kissed goodbye like teenagers, all passion and promises. I followed Vanessa home, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice. She arrived at 9:45 and parked in our driveway. By the time I got home 10 minutes later, she was in her pajamas reading a book on the couch. "How was Liz?" I asked. "Good. We talked about her divorce. She's having a hard time." Vanessa didn't look up from her book. "How was work?" "Productive," I said. "Very productive." The next morning, I called Tom Brennan and asked him to draw up divorce papers. Not to file, not yet, but to have them ready. I also asked him to prepare documents transferring our joint assets into my name alone. The house, the business accounts, the investment portfolio. "You're sure about this?" Tom asked. "I'm sure." "It's going to get ugly, Eli. Adultery cases always do." "Let it get ugly," I said. "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." That afternoon, I had lunch with my foreman, Jimmy Walsh. Jimmy had worked for my father before me, a tough Irishman who knew every contractor and tradesman in 3 counties. He also knew every piece of gossip in town. "Jimmy," I said over our sandwiches, "what do you know about Derek Mallory?" Jimmy's face darkened. "Why?" "Just curious. He's been sniffing around some of our contracts." "Derek Mallory's a crook, Eli. Always has been. His old man was the same way. Corner every shortcut, bribe every inspector, screw every subcontractor. Derek's worse because he's smoother about it." "Any proof?" "Plenty of rumors. The Harbor Point project last year. Word is he used substandard materials and paid off the building inspector. The environmental study for the wetlands development was bogus too. Derek's got half the town council in his pocket." I filed that information away. Derek's corruption would be useful when the time came to destroy him. That weekend, Vanessa announced she was feeling well enough to go back to work. She seemed eager to return to her normal routine, which I now knew included regular meetings with Derek. "I'm glad you're feeling better," I said. "Things haven't been the same without you." She smiled and kissed my cheek. "I love you, Eli." The lie came so easily, it was almost impressive. 2 weeks after the accident, I was ready to make my move. I'd gathered enough evidence to destroy both Vanessa and Derek, secured my financial assets, and prepared for the war that was coming. All I needed was the right moment. It came on a Tuesday night. I was working late in my shop when I heard a car in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Derek Mallory's BMW parked next to Vanessa's Mazda. They were in my driveway, at my house, probably planning their next move in the scheme to steal my business. The audacity was breathtaking. I walked to the house and found them in my kitchen, drinking my coffee and spreading papers across my table. Financial documents, legal forms, business contracts. They looked up when I entered, and for a moment, nobody spoke. "Eli," Vanessa said finally, "you're home early." "It's my house," I said calmly. "I can come home whenever I want." Derek stood up, trying to look authoritative. He was a big man, soft around the middle but still imposing. "Eli, we need to talk." "Do we?" I looked at the papers on my table. "What's all this?" "Business opportunity," Derek said. "Vanessa and I have been discussing ways to expand Griffin Construction. Bring it into the modern era. By stealing it from me?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Vanessa went pale, but Derek just smiled. "Nobody's stealing anything, Eli. But let's be honest. You're in over your head. This business needs professional management, modern systems, real leadership. I can provide that." "With my wife's help?" "Vanessa understands the big picture. She sees the potential you're wasting." I looked at my wife, sitting at my kitchen table, planning my destruction with her lover. "Is that what you see, Vanessa? Wasted potential?" She couldn't meet my eyes. "Eli, please, let us explain." "Explain what? How you've been screwing Derek Mallory for 8 years? How you've been stealing money from our accounts? How you've been planning to have me declared incompetent so you can take my business?" Derek stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute." "No, you wait." I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos. Vanessa and Derek at the motel, Vanessa and Derek at restaurants, Vanessa and Derek in hotel rooms. "I know everything." Vanessa started crying. Derek looked like he'd been punched. 8 years, I continued. 8 years of lies, 8 years of betrayal, 8 years of planning my destruction. Did you really think I was that stupid? "Eli, please," Vanessa sobbed. "Let me explain." "Explain what? That you love him? That you never loved me? That our entire marriage has been a joke?" I gathered up their papers and threw them in the trash. "Get out of my house." Derek found his voice. "You can't just... I can do whatever I want. This is my house, my business, my life. You're both trespassing." "Vanessa lives here too," Derek said. "Not anymore." I pulled out the divorce papers Tom Brennan had prepared. "She can find somewhere else to sleep. Maybe room 12 at the Harborview Motel." Vanessa's sobs got louder. Derek looked at the papers, then at me, calculating his options. "This isn't over, Eli," he said finally. "You're right," I replied. "It's just getting started." After they left, I sat in my kitchen and called Tom Brennan. It was 10 p.m., but this couldn't wait. "Tom, it's Eli. I need you to file those papers first thing tomorrow morning." "All of them?" "Everything. Divorce, asset transfer, restraining order, the works." "Eli, are you sure? Once we file, there's no going back." "I'm sure." The next morning, Vanessa returned to find the locks changed and her belongings in boxes on the front porch. She pounded on the door, screaming and crying, but I didn't answer. The neighbors watched from their windows, and I knew the story would be all over town by noon. That was fine. Let them talk. Liz arrived an hour later to help Vanessa load her things. They made 3 trips to Liz's car, carrying 8 years of shared life in cardboard boxes. When they were done, Vanessa stood in the driveway and stared at the house like she was seeing it for the first time. I watched from the workshop window as she got in Liz's car and drove away. I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no second thoughts, just the cold satisfaction of a job well done. The divorce papers were served that afternoon. Vanessa's lawyer called Tom within an hour, demanding a meeting. The financial asset transfers were already in motion. By the end of the week, I'd have sole control of everything we'd built together. Derek was harder to hurt, but not impossible. I started with the building inspector who'd approved his Harbor Point project. Eddie Kowalski was a decent man who'd been struggling financially since his wife's cancer diagnosis. According to Jimmy Walsh, Derek had offered Eddie $20,000 to overlook some structural problems. I found Eddie at Murphy's Tavern on Thursday night, drinking alone at the end of the bar. He looked older than his 50 years, worn down by worry and compromise. "Eddie," I said, taking the stool next to him, "buy you a drink?" "Eli Griffin, heard about your troubles. Sorry, man." "Thanks. Mind if I ask you something?" Eddie shrugged. I ordered him another beer and got straight to the point. "Derek Mallory's been paying you to falsify inspection reports." Eddie went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." $20,000 for Harbor Point, $15,000 for the wetlands project, $10,000 for the shopping center renovation. I'd done my homework. "How much is your integrity worth, Eddie?" "You don't understand," Eddie said desperately. "My wife's medical bills. I understand perfectly. Derek found a good man in a bad situation and turned him into a criminal." I pulled out a manila envelope. "But it doesn't have to stay that way." Inside the envelope were copies of Derek's building permits, Eddie's inspection reports, and photographs showing the substandard work. Everything needed to prove corruption and fraud. "You can make this right," I said. "Come clean, cooperate with the authorities, and maybe you can keep your job. Stay quiet, and when this all comes out, and it will come out, you'll go down with Derek." Eddie stared at the evidence, his hands shaking. "He'll destroy me." "He's already destroyed you. This is your chance to fight back." I left Eddie with the envelope and my phone number. 2 days later, he called the State Building Authority and confessed everything. The investigation into Derek's business practices began immediately. The dominoes fell quickly after that. Derek's construction projects were shut down pending investigation. His building permits were revoked. His business partners started distancing themselves from the scandal. The town council launched an ethics inquiry into his conduct as a selectman. Vanessa tried to weather the storm, but her position as HR director at the shipping company became untenable when her affair with Derek became public knowledge. The company couldn't afford the scandal. They let her go with a minimal severance package. She moved in with Liz temporarily, then found a small apartment above the hardware store on Main Street. I saw her occasionally around town, looking diminished and lost. She'd aged years in a matter of weeks. Derek's wife Patricia filed for divorce and took half his assets. His business collapsed under the weight of criminal charges and civil lawsuits. The Harbor Point project alone resulted in $2 million in damages when the substandard construction caused a partial collapse. I watched it all unfold from a distance, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. They'd tried to destroy me, and instead they'd destroyed themselves. My own divorce proceeded smoothly. Vanessa's lawyer tried to claim she deserved half of everything, but the evidence of her adultery and financial deception made those arguments impossible. She got her personal belongings and nothing else. The business thrived without the distraction of a failing marriage. I hired 2 new crews and took on the contracts Derek's company had abandoned. Griffin Construction became the most successful operation in 3 counties. 6 months after the accident, I was a free man with a growing business and a clear conscience. Vanessa was broke, unemployed, and alone. Derek was facing criminal charges and financial ruin. Justice, it seemed, had a sense of irony. The phone call came on a snowy Tuesday in February, almost a year after the accident that started everything. It was Liz, and she sounded desperate. "Eli, please, you have to help her." "Help who?" "Vanessa. She's not doing well. She lost her apartment, she can't find work, she's been staying in her car." I looked out the window at the snow falling on my property, my house, my life that I'd rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. "That's not my problem anymore, Liz. She's your wife. Ex-wife. as of 3 months ago. Please, Eli, I know she hurt you, but she's desperate. She needs help. She should have thought of that before she decided to destroy me. I hung up and went back to my dinner. An hour later, there was a knock at my door. Vanessa stood on my porch looking like a ghost of the woman I'd married. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled and dirty. She'd lost weight, and her eyes had a hollow, desperate look. Hello, Eli. Vanessa. Can I come in? Just for a minute? I stepped aside and let her enter. She looked around the house like she was visiting a museum of her former life. It looks good, she said. You've redecorated. What do you want, Vanessa? She turned to face me, and I saw tears in her eyes. I want to come home. The words hung between us like a challenge. I studied her face, looking for any trace of the woman I'd once loved. This isn't your home anymore. Eli, please, I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. 8 years of adultery isn't a mistake. Stealing money isn't a mistake. Trying to steal my business isn't a mistake. Those were choices. I was confused. I was unhappy. So you decided to destroy me instead of just leaving? She started crying then, deep sobs that shook her whole body. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I was wrong, but I love you. I've always loved you. No, you haven't. You loved what I could give you. The house, the security, the respectability. You loved Derek because he could give you excitement and money. You've never loved me. That's not true. It is true. And you know what? I don't care anymore. I don't hate you, Vanessa. I don't love you. I don't feel anything for you at all. You're nothing to me now. The words hit her like physical blows. She staggered backward, still crying. Please, Eli, I have nowhere else to go. That's not my problem. I'll do anything. I'll sign whatever you want. There's nothing you have that I want. Nothing you can give me that I need. You made your choice, Vanessa. Live with it. I walked to the door and opened it. Cold air rushed in, carrying snowflakes that melted on the hardwood floor. Goodbye, Vanessa. She stood there for a long moment, looking at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Then she walked to the door, paused, and looked back. I really did love you, she whispered. No, I said. You didn't. She walked into the snow and got into an old Honda that must have been borrowed or rented. I watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the storm. I closed the door, poured myself a drink, and sat in my chair by the fire. Outside, the wind howled and the snow fell, but inside I was warm and safe and alone. For the first time in 15 years, I was exactly where I wanted to be. 3 months later, I heard that Vanessa had left Maine. Some said she'd moved to Florida. Others thought it was California. Derek Mallory was in prison, serving 2 years for fraud and corruption. His wife had remarried and moved to Portland. I didn't care where any of them went. They were part of my past now, and I was done looking backward. Griffin Construction continued to grow. I bought Derek's old office building and turned it into my headquarters. I hired a secretary, expanded into commercial projects, and started planning for the future. I never remarried. I dated occasionally, but I was careful to keep things casual. I'd learned the hard way that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to rebuild. But I was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy, in a way I hadn't been for years. I had my work, my house, my independence. I had friends who respected me and employees who depended on me. I had a life that was entirely my own. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about the phone call that started it all, the accident that revealed the truth, the betrayal that set me free. They say that when one door closes, another opens, but sometimes you have to burn down the whole house to find the exit. I'd found mine, and I wasn't looking back.